Hi, it's Joy Foster, founder of TechPixies, the host of the Sparkle and Thrive podcast. And I am so excited that we are back with guests after a series of Fly Solo podcasts. And this guest is one of the TechPixie favorites. She's been on the podcast a few times. Welcome back, Lisa Mellis.
Hi, great to be here.
So one thing that you might not know about Lisa and I is that we have the same wedding anniversary. And it turns out Teresa Klausner as well has the same wedding anniversary as us, which is the 5th of June. And the picture of you and Jenny on your wedding day, when we posted it on our social media feed to celebrate Pride Month a couple of years ago, it was one of the most popular posts that we'd ever put up. So you're wearing the wedding dress that you...
I am. I do like an occasion. So I thought I'd get it out. And I was a bit worried that you might want to reschedule because I've put makeup on and everything. So
you look fabulous. And we're back to our filmed podcast. So of course you can listen to this on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, or you can watch it. And if you're watching, you can see this gorgeous dress that Lisa's got. So Lisa, not a lot of people know about the dress and the story behind the dress, but you've got a great story behind your dress.
Yeah. So I think when we had a real difficulty looking for wedding dresses because, I guess we never actually went to a bridal suite. We never went to go and see, proper bride's dresses. And we looked around the shops and it was a difficult thing to decide what to wear because we knew we definitely didn't want to have like two white, well, it's white sort of, but not two sort of white dresses and a veil and kind of, or for one of us to be wearing like, to look like a sort of bride and groom. We didn't want that. So we were really struggling to think of what to do. And then Jenny saw these Mexican wedding dresses and I really liked it, but I thought, it took quite a while for it to get here. So I was a bit sort of concerned, but anyway, we sent off for these wedding dresses. They're all hand stitched. They're absolutely beautiful. They're Ada Corona is the wedding dress maker. So if you're looking for a wedding dress and you're interested, look her up. And she's really supportive. She's retweeted for us when we showed the original dresses. But when mine arrived, as beautiful as it was, these sleeves were quite long and they had kind of bows on the sides. So what I decided to do is to take them up. So I went and bought some antique lace and went and I'm hoping my mum's not going to be watching this because my mum thinks I had it done by a professional to this day. But there's that moment when you're taking scissors to your wedding dress going, oh no. And so,
oh my gosh, so I totally took scissors to my wedding dress and that was my bridezilla story. But this isn't about me, but I totally had to do that. I had to use mustache scissors to carefully unpick something that someone had done because it just is so personal, isn't it, your wedding dress?
Well, as if you can do it, you can do it. So I think I got away with it. So I've just about got away with it. But it was. I'm really lucky. I had the wedding of my dreams, really, and I've got my ring here. I just realised that your name is on my wedding ring, not Joy Foster, but your name is on my wedding ring because it's we've got two that this was my dad's wedding ring that was melted down because my dad's passed away, and we had his wedding ring from him and my mum melted down and made into two.
Oh, I love that.
Two halves together. And although I haven't really been able to wear mine for a while because I broke my arm and the swelling made it difficult, so I haven't been able to wear it. But it says romance, disillusionment, joy. So around the edge.
I love that.
But so the two, when they fit together, they say that around the edge. And we had them made by a ring designer. Oh, this is the story behind the ring, actually. I've never told you this. So Jenny is obsessed with Xena Warrior Princess. I don't know if anyone's aware of Xena Warrior Princess. So before we got married, we went to see Xena Warrior Princess in Paris in person. And so I asked her, I said, have you got any wedding advice? The actress, Lucy Lawless. Yeah. So I asked her, have you got any wedding advice? And she wrote down some wedding advice for us to take away with us. And she said the secret to a happy marriage is to think of it as like a circle, like a cycle of romance, disillusionment, joy. So you're in love and then things get a bit sort of things get a bit tiring, you start arguing, you start falling out, and then you go to disillusionment and you fall out, and then it goes to joy, and then you're back to romance again. So she said that was the cycle of how to have a happy marriage. So that's the story behind my ring.
That's so interesting, because there's a whole book on joy that Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama wrote, which I absolutely love. But also, one of the things that I learned early on, when you get named a name like joy, because I'm kind of have to go like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
But, content in all circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what it means. And it's something that I try to embody. No one likes a grumpy joy. Occasionally grumpy joy comes out, but I think there's so much truth in that actually joy is the thing that connects you to romance, but also is the thing that comes after disillusionment. It's that content in all circumstances. And I think that's really cool.
So we had lots of really sort of happy accidents, really kind of nice things that happened for our wedding. But I think what is nice is because it's not traditional, that we didn't have to have a traditional wedding. So we planted a tree, and we did all these kind of things that is maybe not something that you'd normally do at a wedding. What I was really, really keen on when on getting married is I really wanted everyone to be on board. So everyone who I spoke to, I said, oh, by the way, it's a same-sex wedding, kind of, are you okay with that? For the only reason that I didn't want any drama on the day. And honestly, if somebody was to say, no, I'm not interested in doing that, I'd rather I'll find someone else. Didn't want any drama. I'm definitely not the sort of person that if somebody said they weren't going to make me a wedding cake, that I wouldn't take them to the High Court. I would just walk away, So I was really keen on that. So anyway, we wanted a steel drum band because I love all things tropical. And the venue was quite tropical. It had lots of like palm trees and that kind of thing. It was in the UK. And so I wanted a steel drum band, and I phoned round a couple of steel drum bands, and this one steel drum band was quite reasonable. And I did the normal thing. I said, it's a same-sex wedding, just so you're aware. And the guy got really upset with me. He said, are you accusing me of being homophobic? And he said, well, I'm not interested in working with you if, you think I'm homophobic. And, he was getting really, really upset about it. And the more he got upset, I thought, I think perhaps he is homophobic. So I had to go with somebody. I had to go with somebody who's like twice the price, but they were really, really good. But it's like dramas like that you really can't be doing with, really.
No, that's so interesting. Well, and as you and I both know, same-sex marriage hasn't always been accepted. So, as we're in Pride Month this month, I thought it would be a really good idea to have a chat about what it's like in 2022 for someone in a same-sex marriage, particularly in the workspace. In Psychology Today, they were saying one of the top challenges for someone in a same-sex marriage is how do they talk about it in the work environment? Have we come a long way? Do we have a long way to go? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's interesting. When I was sat and I thought about it, I remember when Black Lives Matter came into prevalence in 2020. And I remember thinking to myself, I remember thinking quite naively thinking, well, that's an American problem, and I was thinking, well, we don't really have kind of issues of racism here. And it wasn't until a lot of my friends of colour started speaking out and saying, actually, this is what happened to me, and that's what's happened to me, and this is how my experiences have affected me, that I realised how important Black Lives Matter was. So I'm not comparing the two, and they're not the same, but what I'm saying is, one of my friends was telling me how a really close friend of mine was telling me how she was sat in her car and somebody spat at her, had seen, and told her to go back to her own country. And this sort of thing I wasn't really aware of. So when people say I know that some people say, oh, we've come on such a long way, haven't we, with gay rights and LGBT rights, I should say, LGBT plus. And we have in many ways, but yeah, there is plenty of work to be done. I mean, there's still places in the world where the death penalty is still, enacted for not even marriage. It's just for people just living their lives, I mean, I certainly wouldn't go to somewhere like Dubai on holiday. You know, there's a lot of dangerous places in the world. I do think we have come a long way because, you know, growing up lesbian, it wasn't fun. You know, I mean, there was no role models to look to, particularly in the 90s. I'd say there was nobody that you could look to and say, oh, you know, maybe I'll be like them one day, or maybe I'll have a life like them one day. There was just nobody. And because of Margaret Thatcher introduced Section 28, Section 28 existed to make it illegal to talk about gay people in schools, get LGBT. We couldn't talk about anything, because I think her philosophy was, if you don't talk about it, it won't happen, and there won't be, you know, LGBT people. That she thought talking about it, I think, bred, you know, the problem, so to speak. So yeah, you didn't hear about it in schools, you didn't get any education, didn't get any sex education, didn't get anything really. So we have come a long way since those days. I think when I was younger, looking to the future, I would just see my future as blank. I wouldn't see, you know, I couldn't think of myself as, you know, so I thought as a young person, I think, well, I'm not going to get married. I'm not going to have children. Like, where am I going to live? Who am I going to live with? What? I couldn't see anything into the future. There wasn't sort of any nugget of something to hold on to of what life might be like in the future. Whereas I think children these days necessarily don't have that. There are role models and there are people to look to, which is great. So that is good progress. I think one thing to think about is, I think it's really important to think about the way you speak to your children about it, because when I was younger, I remember hearing friends and family saying things like, you know, gay people should be hung and all this kind of thing, and not realizing that actually, if you're saying these things, you could be insulting your own child, you know, or you could be deeply hurting your own child without really realizing it. So I think we have undoubtedly come a long way, and I think we will come a long way. The comparison that I'm making between Black Lives Matter is not to be, you know, I don't wish to cause any offense, because I know that's a totally different situation. But I read the book of how to talk to white people about racism. That's the title, isn't it? And she said that white people have got to be anti-racist. So I think the same thing exists with LGBT issues. You've got to be anti-homophobic, because we can't do it. We can't do it for other people. So, you know, if you're hearing something, for example, in the workplace where somebody's saying something inappropriate, it's not going to have the same gravitas if I correct somebody than if a straight person corrects them. Do you know what I mean? So that's where I think the comparison exists.
In female advancement in technology, it's the same way. If you have male advocates,
yeah,
it's going to go a lot further than if it's just women beating on a drum saying we need more equality. Do you mean Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race? Is that the book you're talking about?
Yes, yeah, that's the one. That's the one.
Lodge.
And she talks about how to be anti-racist, you know, and like I say, I don't want to cause any offense, because I know it's a totally different situation, but when you're talking about, you know, minorities, the best people that can stand up for minorities are the people that aren't in that minority. That's my opinion, because it's very difficult for people on the other side of it, you know, because you can shout and shout.
That's such an important point that you make, but then how does that person articulate it so that they can help?
It's the little comments that probably would be left. And I think that's how she describes it in the book. The sort of, you know, the joke that was a bit much that was kind of left. And you know, I think.
Well, I remember growing up, the thing that teenage boys used to say all the time, don't be gay.
Yeah, yeah.
And
it's been a thing quite a lot recently.
It's not leaving those comments. I mean, I remember one time at a football or a basketball game, the guys saying to a girl, go back to the jungle, you know, and it's just like, that's where you get the opportunity, as a person who is white or who's not gay, to say, hang on guys, that's not appropriate. And you know, because in theory they respect you and they, you know, they're going to listen to you. But you know, I do think I remember being very uncomfortable in both situations, when someone would say, oh, don't be gay, or, oh, go back to the jungle, you just sort of look at these people that and you think, where did that come from?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not in the business of trying to change people's beliefs. So for example, if somebody is if they don't agree with gay marriage, I'm not trying to make them agree with it. I just think we can coexist. Do you know what I mean? I think if somebody doesn't agree, I mean, that's and again, like everything that I'm saying today, these are just my opinions. I don't speak for every LGBT plus person. It's just from my perspective. I think if somebody holds a belief, like they wouldn't, their religion or whatever states that they don't believe in gay marriage, I would say, each their own. That's fine, as long as it doesn't impact me and my rights, and that's fine. I'm not trying to change anyone's mind. I'm not trying to bludgeon everyone with with what my beliefs are, and trying to change them to my mindset.
Well, I did grow up in a Christian background, and I still am a Christian, but it's definitely an area of my faith, my Christian faith, that I've changed over the years, because obviously when you grow up in an environment that has a fundamentalist angle, you're going to have one way of viewing it. And I was actually through friends, one friend in particular, whose girlfriend, her mom had gotten divorced, and then had repartnered with a woman. And this friend of mine and I, we had the opportunity to drive across the country together. So we had a lot of time to talk and to chat and to, really debate these issues in a safe environment where, it's just the two of us in a car, and we're driving across the country. We have a really great relationship with each other. We're like best friends. And actually it was a wonderful transformational experience for me, because I was able to, in a safe environment, say the things that I've been told, and for him to, in a safe environment, say, I think you should think about this differently. And, I would say that trip, the person that left Chicago and landed in Arizona was a totally different person in terms of the way that I felt about, at the time, gay rights, and, like you said, LGBTQ plus rights now. But it was through the conversation of someone else who was sharing a personal story about, it was his ex-girlfriend's mom, but it was just this sort of like, why, his point to me was, why doesn't she have the right to love? Why doesn't she have the right to be with someone that she loves and have a happy, fulfilling life? And, why should it matter, whether they're the same sex or not? And, we had a conversation about kids, and raising kids. And we now have friends in our class. So I'm class of 1998 from high school. So he was in my high school class, and they're in a same-sex marriage, two dads, they've got kids. They brag about them all the time on social media, talk about the challenges, etc., of being two dads. But it's like, he opened up a world to me that was really important, because it gave me the impetus to say, well, no, what do I really believe? Like, do I believe love is love? And yeah, actually, I do believe love is love. And, and that's my opinion, right? But it was formed and shaped by hearing the stories of real people and connecting with real people. And I mean, it's very, you don't know how someone's going to react to it. And that's I guess that's the question here is, when let's say someone hasn't yet come out of the closet, as they say, and they are in a work environment, and they've got the boss saying to them, when are you going to get married? And, but the assumption that, like, when's that boyfriend going to pop around, or when's that girlfriend going to pop around? And, I have a very, very dear friend of mine who's Greek, and, that what he could never tell his family what was going on in his life. So, like, how do you talk about it in the workplace? How do you navigate that? And I love your approach too. I'm not going to try and change your mind, but I mean, you work for TechPixies, and I don't know if you remember how you sort of subtly drop the conversation in, but
vaguely. I think that's always one of Jenny's tips. So when my wife Jenny, when she starts a job or she meets people, she'll just drop it into conversation, like, oh, my wife and I had sushi or something, she just like drop it in and that's done, which is fine, but which is actually easier if you have got a wife. If you've just otherwise, how do you put that into a conversation? It's much harder if you haven't really got any. Oh, I don't mean it like that, but if you haven't got a story to tell, like sometimes you just want to stay quiet. And I've been that person. If you're not in a relationship, you're not going to kind of go up to people and tell them this stuff. So it is tricky. I think. But
you had some reservations because you knew about my Christian faith.
I did. I always will if somebody's religious, because you never know. Now, I think my relationship with religion has changed a lot over the last few years, and actually, I think I would just. It has. My relationship has evolved with religion, and I've met so many people in my life who are religious and have been incredibly accepting, incredibly helpful, and couldn't have a more Christian attitude, I suppose you could say. Actually, not just Christian, any religion, not just talking about Christians, but I'm talking about religious people who have been incredibly accepting. So yeah, it's repaired my. But I think the damage is done for LGBT people in childhood. I think it's the constant kind of indoctrinating with the kind of like, the sin and you're going to hell and it just turns people straight away from it, because I know myself, I know in my heart, I can't change who I am. I can't, however I have been born, however it's happened, I am this way, and it's not going anywhere, it's not changing anytime soon. So, and that from an early age, I think, as well. So when you kept getting putting this, don't choose this way of life, don't do that, don't do this, and you don't have an option but to choose that way of life, you're definitely going to turn away from religion, because it's almost like religion's a lie. You're almost being taught like religion's a lie. So yeah, it's a tricky one. So in the workplace, I mean, I've had a real varied experience in the workplace. I mean, obviously TechPixies has been hugely supportive. I've never had any sort of issues from day one, and everyone.
Well, and actually from day one in the interview, I think that's how you did it. You just dropped it in, like my wife, Jenny, and I, live in Bristol or wherever it was. And
I mean, I'm surprised if I did it in the interview, but okay.
Yeah, you did. I think you did.
Oh, did?
Yeah, because I remembered kind of clocking, oh, wife Jenny, okay, and just kind of clocking that. Because we had also hired, actually both you and Juliet were hired on the same day, and Juliet,
really?
And I didn't know Juliet was married to Elaine, so there you go. The cool thing is it doesn't matter who someone's married to, you're hiring the person, right? But I do think that one way to be honest, do you want to work in an environment where it's not welcome? And actually in an interview, if it is appropriate to kind of drop it in the way that it should, that it's natural, that also can help test the water as to whether or not this is a place that you want to work in, because that is the trick. It's like, and I mean, there's some careers that are tougher than others, but
I think one difficulty though, Joy, if I can cut in, is you could be in a really good place of work that you really like working in, but obviously people come and go.
Yeah.
So I mean, Jenny's last job, she really liked working there. She was, she's met loads of friends there, but she had a manager. She's left there now anyway, but she had a manager who one day said, just in the break room, just said, I don't believe in gay people having children because I think it's terrible. I don't think they should be allowed. He just said that in the middle of in the break room, just when they're on their lunch, and nobody said anything.
Oh God.
So then but it was her manager. It was her actual manager. So then she had to go to him and have a conversation about how it was inappropriate that he would say that in front of a group of people, knowing that she was LGBT as well, and kind of, you know, so I mean, it is difficult, but I mean, I suppose a lot of my working experience has been in schools. So now the interesting thing about schools are hugely heteronormative environment. So what that means is you're unlikely to see someone who is LGBT, or you're probably going to get the impression that everybody's straight. But in any large community, there's going to be, you know, plenty of people that are LGBT, but they'll just be hidden. And one of my really best friends, who's Asian, she said to me, she goes, "There's no Asian people aren't gay." She goes, "You don't get any Asian gay people." And I said, "You do." And I said, "That's actually quite worrying, that, you know, they must be sort of suppressed in her community." That she's like, no, there isn't any at all. But I think that's one of the things with working in schools, when I used to work in schools, is that kind of that heteronormative environment where people don't feel like they can come out, or they don't feel that, well, they're young as well. You know, if you're in your teenage years, you're not gonna want to, you know, put yourself out there. Well, I certainly didn't. But I've worked in faith schools, and I've also worked in non-denominational schools. And I have to say, of the two, the faith school was probably the better one to work in. So when I worked in a non-denominational school, I had a head teacher, because the head teachers can put any sort of policy they want, they can kind of push that through. And we had some assemblies with some, I mean, I guess they were religious people, I don't know, but saying some awful things, just standing up and teaching, like, you know, with a slide presentation of a husband and wife, and everything else is sin, and everything else is going to hell, and all this kind of thing. And you're thinking,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, just that's not even that long ago. That's going back, I don't know, 10 or so years.
Well, that is the one thing, because I don't think you could get away with that today.
I don't think you can, no, certainly not in this country. I don't think you can. And I also had somebody that this was in the non-denominational school, this was years ago, who wanted to be my friend. And so she kept saying, "Oh, we'll go for coffee, we'll go here and come around to my house," and all the rest of it. And I was talking about my relationship at the time. And she just stopped me and she said, "You know, I don't agree with your lifestyle, don't you?" And I was like, "Oh, no, I didn't know that." And yeah, she said, so she goes, "But I think, you know, we'll find you a nice man." She said that she wanted to help me to find Jesus. And then I thought, oh, just, you know, but I thought we were friends. I thought we were getting on. And it was actually kind of like she was trying to save
her
me.
mission was to save,
trying to save me, I guess. So I mean, yeah. So, but that was.
But I think what you said in the very beginning is so poignant. Like, your future was blank. And actually, if you look at the statistics, and this is what I found really interesting, sort of in preparing for this, you know, the statistics for people from the LGBTQ plus community, you know, the lower paying jobs, they're, you know, the career trajectory is not as promising. Like, there's a whole bunch of things that, you know, you could say the same of someone from, you know, an ethnically diverse background as well, from, you know, and also gender inequality, right? Just the fact that you're born female, you're going to make less than you would if you were born male. And so yeah. I think, you know, these divergent traits that make us unique, being a, you know, female, or a female of color, or a female from a different sexual orientation, you know, or just someone from a different sexual orientation, right? So not everyone considers themselves female. So yeah, there is, up until now, there's been a big disparity between these groups of people, and you stack things on and it gets worse, right? You know, and I think that was the other point. It's like, you know, okay, let's try being a woman, let's try being, you know, a Black lesbian, you know, like once you start adding things on, it suddenly becomes even harder and harder for people to move forwards. How do people face that, and what do they do? What's your piece of advice? Because I want people to look at their future and see a bright, beautiful future. And, no matter what their race or their sexual orientation or their gender is. And so, and I know you well enough to know that you don't have a blank canvas anymore. You've got a future, and it's bright, and you're forging forward with it, and you're doing all sorts of incredible creative endeavors. How do you help someone to realize that future is there and that they have it and they should take it?
I think it is much, much easier to see a bright future now. And if you are watching this and you don't feel like you see a bright future, I'm sure we can put some relevant links to places where you can go for people to help you, because there is a lot of help out there if you are struggling. But I think the way in which allies, shall we say, can help us is, like I said before, is not to give hate speech a voice, and shut that down. I also think if people don't believe in this, I don't know who said it, but if you don't believe in gay marriage, then don't have one. So just live and let people be. And I think I read a quote recently that said, you don't have to agree on anything to be kind. And I think that's a good point. You don't have to. You can try and see things from people's point of view, and I think that's really important, but you don't have to agree. Getting to know people, isn't that the best thing? I think some people might be watching this. Some people might even be watching this and thinking, oh, I'm not really sure about this LGBT stuff. And then they might see me and go, oh, well, Lisa seems all right. Do you know what I mean? Or they might, you meet somebody and you go, oh, well, they seem okay. And you listen to their point of view and you get to know them as a person. And I think that's sometimes the best way. People will get to know you. And if you're good in your heart, then, you've got nothing to worry about. And, life will get better.
I love that. Well, and I think that's the other thing is very often we can't change the people around us, but we can change the way we respond to the people around us. And instead of reacting, we respond. We talk about that a lot in the Dream Builder program. And just recognizing that, and I think this is really important, because one of the things that we talk about in the Dream Builder program is rewriting an old story, right? And very often the stories that we've written were written by other people. And, like you said, you go to the assembly and you hear this story, and then you think that's, you'd, like Brene Brown would say, you take on shame and you live with that shame, and that shame affects the rest of your life. And actually that's the story up until now. And you write a new story and you say, no, I have nothing to be ashamed of. I'm proud of who I am. And this is who I am. And I'm not going to change. And in the genetic makeup of who I am. But what I can change is the way that I think about myself and about the environment around me, and start to believe in who I am. And that's really, really important, to be able to embrace who you are, and then to start to paint that canvas and to start to see what that life could look like. And, and then be the model for people that need a model. Because, I think when you were speaking about the people that you couldn't see, Mary Portas and Ellen DeGeneres, they didn't exist when they came out later and became these prominent figures. But even in both of those cases, in Mary Portas's case, she wrote a great book, Think Like a Woman. She was married to a man for a very long time and lived a life that she thought she needed to live for everyone else, until she fell madly in love with a woman. And then her whole life changed.
I think the same could be said about Ellen DeGeneres. When she came out, she was then shot down in flames. She lost all I think she had a sitcom and all this kind of thing. She lost all of that because, it wasn't really accepted in that time. So even then, she was a great role model. Don't get me wrong, she was a great role model, but, you almost had to watch her fall and then think, oh no. So if I do the same, I'm going to meet the same outcome. Whereas it's not like that these days.
And then she rose again, right?
And then she rose again.
And that's the beauty of that story. And actually the book I referenced was incorrect. It was Work Like a Woman.
Oh yeah.
So, and I don't even think that her second marriage worked out. But the point is, she really lived one life that wasn't her true authentic self. And then she lived another life that was more her true authentic self. And I think we all are on this journey of discovery of who is our true authentic self and how can I be my true authentic self in this world that we live in. And fortunately, I think it is getting better, but there's still a lot of work to do. And I think you've given some great tips for people who want to be allies in this space and who want to, to just to not let the comments sit without a repercussion of some sort, without a conversation. Like you said, Jenny had to go to her old boss and say, this isn't appropriate what you said. And it's, why did she have to do that? Why couldn't someone else stand up and say that? And there's so many stories like that. So I think reading books where you educate yourself, having conversations with people, recognizing, I totally agree with you. So many conversations happen around people who have the same beliefs and that the person that they're talking about is not in the room.
Yeah.
Right? The gay person, the lesbian, she's not in the room.
Yeah.
And you're having this conversation, but if she was sitting right there looking at you, or he's sitting right there looking at you, you're having a cup of tea with them, would you be able to say that to their face? Would you be able to, especially would you, if you knew that person heart in heart, would you be able to really say what you just said? Right?
No. I mean, that does happen. Yeah.
So I think it's been a great conversation. I appreciate you, being brave. We talk about be brave on the podcast, be brave, Sparkle, come on here and talk about something that's not always comfortable to talk about, because you don't want to offend anybody, but you also want to educate people. And I've got another special guest that's coming up on the podcast, who's a trans woman. And I'm really looking forward to speaking to her because she's got a perspective that I think is very unique. And I think we need to share these perspectives. So I thank you very much for the time you gave me today to share your perspective.
You're welcome.